I find a lot of inspiration in mythological love stories and the lessons they teach, and one of my favorites is Aphrodite and Adonis. I think it speaks beautifully to the difference between loving angels and loving monsters and how they can look just alike. The difficulty in loving gods, angels, and monsters, and in knowing which one you are. I think a very important part of this story is just self-awareness and also the realization that, first of all, things that are portrayed as heavenly, goddess-like, angel-like, people that appear to you as beautiful creatures may not always have pure intentions for you. If you're familiar with Greek mythology, you are familiar with Aphrodite. Yes, she's the goddess of love and beauty, but she can also be, want things her way, be a bit controlling. The story of Aphrodite and Adonis is that Aphrodite cursed Adonis's mother to fall in love with her own father after her mother had said that her daughter was more beautiful than Aphrodite. Why people didn't learn their lesson with saying this, I have no idea. The daughter's name was Mira, and she did in fact have an incestuous relationship with her father under Aphrodite's curse and gave birth to Adonis. Mira was in such suffering because of this and saw herself in such a bad light that she said she was betraying the living, but it would also be a betrayal for her to offend the dead. So the gods turned her into a mercury. Now Aphrodite had pity for her at this point and took Adonis, her newborn baby, to Persephone. Now Persephone is the goddess of the underworld. I feel like people don't really know this, but Persephone is actually the one who raised Adonis. I happen to love Persephone. She is one of my absolute favorite goddesses. When Adonis came of age, Aphrodite went to the underworld to go and get him because essentially she was very much in love with him. If you don't know about Adonis, he was considered to be one of the most beautiful men to ever exist. So beautiful that the goddess of love and beauty fell for him extremely hard, and he was considered to be the greatest love of her life. Now Persephone and Aphrodite had such a huge argument over Aphrodite wanting to take Adonis back that they took it up to Zeus, and Zeus essentially split Adonis's time, where half the time he would spend on Earth in the living world and the other half he would spend with Persephone in the other world. So he had a very similar situation to his adopted mother, essentially. Aphrodite and Adonis were very madly in love, but I think the lesson really lies in the way Adonis died. It's a bit unknown who exactly ordered his death, but it is widely believed to have been Artemis. Now she is the goddess of the hunt, and apparently she was pissed at Aphrodite because Aphrodite had killed one of her beloved disciples. So she created a boar because what Aphrodite and Adonis love to do together is kind of walk and wander through the woods. She created one that was essentially a monster, just extremely deadly, extremely massive, just a terrifying creature. And she released this boar in the woods where she knew Adonis most liked to walk. The boar came out of the bush and pierced Adonis with its tusks and ran him all the way through. Aphrodite was absolutely devastated over his death. This is the origination story of where the red rose and also where red anemones come from, is from Adonis's blood and Aphrodite's tears. Now I think the most beautiful part of all of this is it is canonically said that when the boar ran through Adonis, the boar had said that he had not meant to destroy him, he had just meant to caress him. And I feel like that says so much about love and self-awareness, because you have to understand that we are all monsters in a kind of way. We all have these kind of qualities. If you think of yourself and your emotional body as a figure, something outside of you, you can have an effect on the people around you when you run towards them and in the ways that you run away. Sometimes it is not that people do not love you, it is that you are being loved by monsters who are not aware of their monstrous qualities. For example, if somebody tries to get close to you and they have tusks growing out of them and they have long razor sharp teeth, them kissing you could look like them biting something out of your flesh. Them caressing you could look like them impaling you. A part of loving somebody is knowing who you are and knowing the force at which you are hitting another person. I feel like that is true tenderness in love. Because in another world, if the boar had been aware of its power, it could have come towards Adonis and nuzzled him, whatever, right? And would not have killed him. Also, in this case, Adonis probably would have tried to kill the boar. This is a very complicated analogy, sort of. But it's like you have to be aware of what your emotional body looks like if you have fangs, if you have tusks, if the people you love have fangs and tusks, the ways in which they run towards you, a monster can love you. I think with how we interpret love and all these kinds of things, it's very much a narrative of if they wanted to, they would. Sometimes people don't come closer because it actually is an act of love, because they know they will hurt you if they get close. However, I feel like that is also a bit of a cop-out because, again, some monsters don't have fangs and tusks coming out. It's part of your self-awareness, right? If you view yourself as a person who is open and honest to love and you rush forward to somebody, hitting them with the full force of what you are, not knowing that you also have damaging qualities that you're going to bestow and put into this other person, then that is the kind of monster you are, right? But there are also people who see themselves as monsters when they are not. So they will leave a gap and they will leave a distance between you because this is where they believe their fangs to be. This is where they believe their tusks to be. And they will not come forward in fear of hurting you. But really that distance just means it is always going to be there. It is a gap that does not need to exist, but it is their self-perception. That is the kind of monster you are. And that is the thing about monsters and angels. It is a lot of trickery, and a lot of what love is bearing yourself and giving your throat open to the possibility of you do not know whether you're going to be caressed or impaled. As scary as an aspect as that is, you also have to think that Adonis loved a goddess who has killed many people, a goddess who played a role in killing his own mother. And that is another kind of monstrosity, right? I guess the thing that I'm trying to say here is that we all have monstrous aspects to ourselves. Mythology confirms that, everything confirms that. Nobody is pure. And even when you look at angels, which we consider to be the most pure kind of beings, they looked like monsters in order to scare the demons away. In order to love, you have to know the monstrous parts of yourself. You cannot avoid the darkness. In avoiding yourself and avoiding looking in the mirror and saying, where do my tusks come in? Where do I have a very strong skin? Where am I weak? Where am I sensitive? Where do my fangs come out? What provokes that? In knowing that, you set yourself up better to love. In order to love in a safe way, you need to know the darkest parts of yourself so that you do not accidentally hurt the people you love the most. And you also need to accept people for what they are and for who they are. Aphrodite needed to accept that she fell in love with a mortal who has shortcomings in the sense that he is mortal. He is prone to death. He is able to die. He has soft flesh. He can be killed by things out of her control. But she did not love him as a mortal. She loved him like he was a god, and he was just a man. And overseeing that quality led her to one of the greatest heartbreaks of her life, because he never should have been allowed to walk in the woods of gods and monsters alone. And I think this is like one of the beautiful ways that love is talked about in mythology and in stories. Love is noticing your mortality and the mortality of others. To love is to be conscious of the death of a thing and to take the risk anyway. To know that the death may come from your own hands and be given to somebody else, or that you may be the one to go. But I think the way that you can make love the healthiest and the longest lasting is to truly look at yourself and to know where your monster is, and to look at the person you love and to know what theirs looks like. And you work together to make the kind of monsters you are be able to live together and be able to live in peace without harming each other. Of course, if you have fangs, if you have tusks, if you have fins, if you have whatever, you're going to break something, right? It is impossible to exist in this world and to not cause harm in one way or the other, whether it's intentional or not. But the thing is, if you are loving people who do not have the intention to hurt you, but also do not take the time to look at themselves and think about what could hurt you, that's not really a proper kind of love either, is it? To love somebody is to look at yourself. To love somebody is to look fully at them and see the monster and the angel, and vice versa. I think it's just like a very sad and beautiful and tragic story, the story of Aphrodite and Adonis. And I think it is a sad, beautiful, tragic story in the way that we have been monsters and loved people and hurt them without knowing, and the ways that it has been done back to us. And it's all part of a very long and conditioned pattern of humanity that has been told in stories since the beginning of time. Love makes you forget about your mortality, the fact that you can in fact die from this. And the way it humbles you is in reminding you. So it's like you have to love deeply, you have to risk it all, because then what is the point of living? Love is what gives it meaning, but also know that it also gives it death. And while it may not result in a physical death, sometimes you go through an emotional death because of the monster in someone, because of the monster in yourself. And that is okay. That is your mortality. That is what connects you to the legends of gods and goddesses and monsters and angels. I think loving someone fully and deeply and madly and opening yourself up and offering yourself up in that way is the most godlike you can be as a human, because it means that in the face of all your mortality, you had the idiocy to think you were immortal. You love someone enough to think that it could be eternal. And sometimes you will be right. Sometimes you will be wrong. But the important thing is that you are not alone in that. You are not the first person to love a monster. You are not the first person to realize you can be one sometimes. You just have to make better choices every time and be more aware and see people clearly and see yourself clearly, and never let it make you turn away from love and run away unless it's chasing you through the woods and it's a wild boar. Because there are casualties in love, but there's also a lot of incredible, godlike, amazing, inspirational things to find in love.